Hello dear viewers. Welcome to the What Happened in History channel. Today I'm going to tell you about one of ancient Rome's most surprising, maybe even most disgusting professions. This profession is so interesting that I've prepared a special 5-part series. If you're ready, let's get started. But I warn you, I don't recommend watching this while eating. In the heart of the Roman Empire, the streets would come alive even before sunrise. Bakers would fire up their ovens. Merchants would open their shops. But there was one group of professionals whose workshops would fill with a completely different smell even before dawn. The owners and workers of these workshops, called Fulones, were called Fulones. So what did these people do? Simply put, they washed laundry. But with what method? This is where the story gets interesting. In the Roman Empire, everyone wanted to wear a white toga. The color white was a symbol of purity, cleanliness, and status. Especially senators and the wealthy had to walk around in spotlessly white togas. But back then, there were no modern detergents. Even soap was very primitive and couldn't really clean greasy fabrics. This is exactly where the Fulones came in. These people met one of Roman society's most important needs: clean laundry. However, the method they used was so shocking that a modern person wouldn't even think of it. The Fulones' workshops were usually located outside the city or in the opposite direction of the wind. The reason for this was the unbearable smell created by their work. But this smell was an indicator of a successful cleaning job. In ancient sources, especially in the writings of the poet Martial, there are many mocking poems about Fulones. However, this mockery was actually an indication of how important the profession was. Because in Rome, no one could live without Fulones. In the next episode, I'll reveal the Fulones' shocking secret. Don't miss it. The shocking secret: urine detergent. In the last episode, we talked about who the Fulones were and why they were an important professional group. Now it's time to reveal the most striking detail. The Fulones used human urine to clean laundry. Yes, you heard that right. Rome's bright white togas, senators' dazzling outfits, the fine fabrics of the wealthy, all of them were washed with human urine. So where did this disgusting method come from? Actually, there was a very scientific logic behind it. The urea substance in urine eventually turns into ammonia. And ammonia was the most powerful cleaning chemical of that era. It dissolved fats, removed stains, and made fabrics bright white. The ancestors of modern bleach were actually human urine. Throughout Rome, especially on busy streets, there were large jars. These jars were known as amphorae and were like public toilets. But their purpose was different. People would leave their urine there. Yes, Roman citizens would urinate into jars on street corners, and these jars were regularly collected by the Fulones. This system was so widespread that Emperor Vespasian, who ruled between 69 to 79 AD, imposed a tax on urine collection. Vectigal urine, or the urine tax, was one of Rome's strangest taxes. When his son Titus mentioned the immorality of this tax to his father, Vespasian took out a coin, held it up to his son's nose, and said his famous words, "Pecunia non olet," money doesn't smell. This saying is still used today and means that it doesn't matter where money comes from. But for that era, it had a much more literal meaning. Money from the urine tax really didn't smell. For the Fulones, urine was as valuable as gold. In the next episode, we'll see how they used this urine and how tough their working conditions were. Dancing in the vat, the Fulones' working life. In the previous episode, we talked about the urine tax and the Fulones' basic raw material. Now let's dive into these people's daily working life, the real horror. A typical day at a Fulones' workshop would start like this. In the early morning hours, apprentices would go out to collect the urine jars from Rome streets. These jars were heavy and the smell was unbearable. The urine brought to the workshop in carts would be poured into large stone vats. Then dirty laundry would be received from customers. Togas, tunics, cloaks, all of them would be thrown into these vats. And now came the most shocking part. The Fulones would pour the urine over the laundry, then get into the vat. Yes, exactly as you heard. The Fulones would get into vats filled with urine up to their knees and stomp on the laundry with their bare feet. For hours, as if dancing, jumping up and down, they would scrub the clothes with their feet. This process was called fular. This is where the name Fulones comes from. Dancing in the vat wasn't an easy job. Feet would slip, the sharp smell of urine would burn the eyes. Young apprentices would constantly vomit and experience dizziness until they got used to this work. But over time their bodies would adapt. They would become almost immune to the smell. After the laundry was subjected to this process for hours, it would be taken out of the vat and rinsed repeatedly in running water. Rome's famous aqueducts like Aqua Virgo and Aqua Claudia also provided abundant water to the Fulones' workshops. The dirty, yellowish water would flow away through the workshop's sewage channels. But the job wasn't finished yet. The rinsed laundry would now be subjected to a second process. In the next episode, I'll tell you how the fabrics were made bright white and the final processes of the workshops. In the last episode, we saw how the Fulones danced in vats full of urine. Now let's look at the secret techniques that actually made the laundry bright white. The fabrics washed with urine and rinsed were now clean but not white enough yet. The Fulones' #1 goal was to give the togas a dazzling whiteness. For this, they used a special technique, sulphur fumigation. In a special section of the workshops, there were closed rooms called fumus. Here, sulphur would be burned and the resulting sulfur dioxide gas would be absorbed into the fabrics. The laundry would be hung on special hangers. Sulfur would be burned underneath, and they would wait for all the air in the room to fill with this gas. Sulfur dioxide is a powerful bleaching agent and would eliminate even the last remaining stains on fabrics. But it was also a very dangerous gas. The Fulones couldn't enter the room during the fumigation process. They would close the door tightly and wait for hours. The fabrics left inside would whiten as if by magic. After this stage, there was another important process, the use of fuller's earth. This special type of clay was known in Latin as creta fullonica and was usually brought from the Umbria region. This clay would absorb the last oil residues on the fabrics and give them softness. Fuller's earth would be applied to the wet fabrics, left to dry, and then carefully removed with special brushes. This process would give the fabric a velvet-like texture. The final stage was pressing. The cleaned and bleached fabrics would be placed between large stone presses and crushed with heavy stones. This would eliminate all wrinkles in the fabric and give it a stiff, neat appearance. Fresco paintings found in Pompeii show us the working stages of the Fulones perfectly. In these frescoes, we can see workers dancing in vats, fabrics being pressed, and happy customers receiving the final product. In the next and final episode, we'll discuss the social status of the Fulones and the importance of this profession in Rome. Welcome to our 5th and final episode. Up until today, we've seen who the Fulones were, that they used urine, how they worked, and their bleaching techniques. Now let's discuss the social position of this interesting profession and its end. When a job is this dirty, it usually means those who do it are looked down upon, right? But in Rome, the situation was a bit different. The Fulones were an indispensable part of society, and this earned them a certain respect. The Fulones had their own guild organizations. These guilds, called collegium, were like a kind of labor union. Members would support each other, organize joint festivals, and could even form political power. In election posters written on walls found in Pompeii, we see that the Fulones Guild supported certain candidates. Wealthy Fulones owners could live quite a prosperous life. The house of a Fulones named Stephanus in Pompeii was one of the city's most magnificent houses. Floors decorated with mosaics, beautiful wall paintings, a spacious atrium. This was proof that the laundry business was a well-paying job. Of course, ordinary workers working in the vats weren't this lucky. Their lives were hard, filled with health problems. Constant exposure to ammonia vapors led to lung diseases. Inhaling sulfur gas was even more dangerous. The average lifespan of a Fulones worker was even shorter than Rome's general average. So how did this profession end? Actually, it didn't completely end. Until the Middle Ages, the tradition of washing laundry with urine continued in various parts of Europe. In fact, in Scotland, human urine was used in the processing of Harris tweed fabric until the 20th century. But with the Industrial Revolution, the invention of chemical detergents completely buried this old method in history. When we pour detergent into our washing machine today and press the button, it's really surprising to think that thousands of years ago in Rome, Fulones were dancing in vats. The story of the Fulones teaches us something important. People have always found solutions for cleanliness, no matter how disgusting these solutions were. And perhaps the things we consider normal today will be found as shocking as the Fulones by people in the future. I hope you've both enjoyed and learned something new about this incredible ancient Roman profession. If you liked the video, don't forget to hit the like button and leave a comment. What other strange professions do you think existed in history? Let's discuss it in the comments. Follow my channel to catch the most interesting, surprising, and sometimes even the most disgusting stories in history. See you in the next video for a new historical adventure. Thank you so much for watching the What Happened in History channel. Take care.